Welcome to tonight's debate between candidates in State School Board District 12. We thank you all for your attendance, both those of you who are here in person and those who are watching us virtually, as well as those who will be joining us on demand at a later date. My name is Jay Evenson. I'm the opinion editor of the Deseret News, and I will be your moderator this evening. We would like to thank our partners, the United Way, the Hinckley Institute of Politics at the University of Utah, the Utah PTA, the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools, and the Deseret News. Our candidates tonight are Republican Cole Kelly and Independent Jason Allen. As we begin, I would like to ask our in-person audience to please refrain from any applause or cheering or booing tonight. I thank you for maintaining a decorum here that will allow our candidates and their ideas to flourish. The debate will proceed as follows. We will have 60-second opening statements by each candidate. Following that, I will pose a series of questions, alternating the order in which they are answered, with candidates being given 90 seconds each to answer. If requested, I will allow a 30-second rebuttal or for follow-up response. The candidates have not been briefed beforehand as to the content of these questions. Now, in the second half of tonight's debate, roughly a half hour in, we hope to use audience questions, both from those who are here in person and those who are watching online. We have paper here available for those who are here in person to please write down their questions, hand them to one of our volunteers here who will give them to me. If you are watching online, please put your questions in the YouTube chat. Prior to the start of this debate, we tossed a coin between the two candidates. Jason Allen will be the first to deliver an opening statement. You may begin.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Jason Allen, and I appreciate this opportunity to discuss what is best for our public education and our children. I bring over 19 years of experience as a public servant to the Utah State Board of Education, and I am committed to conserving and enhancing our public schools to ensure every student receives a high-quality education. Throughout my career, I've engaged in collaborative work with multiple government agencies and private entities to foster an environment of positivity and growth and progress. My experience as a Utah State Park Ranger has equipped me with the skills to protect and enhance our resources. And I will apply these same principles to safeguard and improve our schools and our most important natural resources, our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Cole Kelly. I am the Republican nominee for District 12. And I too want to thank the Debate Commission for this opportunity. I'm an educator. I've been in the education system. I've been a public school teacher for 27 years. First 10 years of my career, I taught at Orem High School. And the last 17 years, I've been at American Fork High School. I love education. I've been doing it 27 years, and I still enjoy going to work. My priority is students. And in Utah right now, one of the things that I want to make sure that we're doing is that we're putting students over the system. I feel like right now there's a push to push kids through our system, and I want to make sure that students are the priority and that we're putting students over systems.
Thank you. Thank you. Each of you have told us a little bit about why you're running. The first question will go to you, Mr. Kelly, and that is, tell us what will be your guiding principles for decision-making as a member of the State Board of Education.
I mentioned that in my introduction, but it's student first. And I think that it's important for us to recognize that the decisions that we're making ultimately impact the bottom line. And the bottom line is the students throughout the state of Utah. That includes students that are receiving educations of all forms, online, charter schools, public schools, traditional public schools, and making sure that we're at the State Board of Education, as we're making those decisions, that we're keeping students at the forefront of those decisions rather than promoting the system. Okay? The student needs to be first. The system is secondary to that. And so my guiding principle is what is best for our students.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen.
Would you repeat the question?
Yes, what will be your guiding principles for decision-making as a member of the State Board of Education?
Guiding principles. Sure. My guiding principles is the guiding principles I'm going to go by, that I'm going by, is to create an environment where everyone can come together and come up with the best solutions for our students and for our public education system. I believe that as a group of stakeholders who are invested in our public education, it's important to include all voices in this. And I believe that I can create that environment and have that responsive voice as people come to me with their problems and their troubles, and be able to together create a solution that will work for our public education system and for each and every student.
Thank you. This question will go first to you, Mr. Kelly. So it has to do with what's on the ballots that will be sent out later on this month. We're all awaiting a decision from the Utah Supreme Court regarding Amendment A. So we don't know yet whether that will or will not, it will be on your ballot. We don't know whether or not it will count. However, to put it simply, Amendment A would put an end to the 80-year-old earmark that funds public education through the income tax. Regardless of whether this survives judicial scrutiny, what is your position on this funding switch?
For me first?
Yes.
Well, in short, I do not support the removal of Amendment A as a source for school funding. The reason I don't support it is I feel that there is a lack of trust with our current legislative body. There's multiple reasons why there is lack of trust with our legislative body. It could be the current political environment nationally, or with the recent developments of the mass number of bills that the legislators have recently pushed through this last legislative session. I believe that with that removal, the public truly has a trust issue that they will fulfill their promise of continuing to properly fund public education. I feel this Amendment A is a guaranteed source of funding with the additional funding that the legislators provide. I do not currently support that removal.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I'm an educator, and you'll have to forgive me, but I oftentimes like to make sure that people understand what it is that is on Amendment A. And so I think it's important to understand what Amendment A is. And what Amendment A is asking the voters to do is, number one, they're saying, okay, it's going to remove the sales tax on food in Utah. And then second, it's going to remove the earmark on education. Okay. One of the things that I am not a fan of that politicians do is mix two issues. These are two standalone issues, in my opinion. I think that they should vote on whether or not they want to remove the sales tax on food as a single issue, and it shouldn't be coupled together with an education issue. And then as far as the earmark on education, I agree that the earmark on education should not be removed. We have a long-standing tradition, and I feel like it's the camel's nose in the tent, and we keep pushing that camel's nose further and further under the tent. And I personally have tremendous relationships with current legislatures in the state of Utah, and a lot of them I trust are putting education first, but I don't know about future legislators, and I don't know what their intention will be. So I would hate to remove that earmark and put funding for education in jeopardy.
Thank you. Staying with the theme here of the ballot, voters this year will also face Amendment B, and we know that this one not only will be on the ballot, but it will count. This would increase the cap on what may be distributed from the permanent school land trust funds from 4% to 5%, or a total of about $14 million. And this will be done without directly affecting taxpayers. Do you support Amendment B, and why? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I think Amendment B is a no-brainer. I think that's a yes on Amendment B. One of the fears is making sure that moving forward, we have enough money to continue to fund education. Moving that from $4 to $5 is not going to put that in jeopardy. Most education experts that I've talked to, most legislatures that I've talked to support Amendment B. As I've studied Amendment B, I think that it's great for education. One of the things that happens with that money is it goes directly to local control. And I'm a huge proponent of local control. And that money the decisions about how that money is going to be spent is being made by the schools and the individual schools. And so I think that increasing that opportunity allows schools to have the opportunity to hire additional aides or do whatever that school feels like is best for their community.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Yes, I agree. Amendment B, it truly is a no-brainer. Anytime that we can provide some additional funding to our public education, especially on a local level, right down to the local schools, is paramount. The studies show that this increased access to these funds is not going to have any detrimental effect on long-term funding sources with the CITLA. And I am fully supporting this amendment, and I would continue to encourage the legislative body to look at possibly even increasing it a little more and providing individual local schools that opportunity to have that funding to meet their local needs.
Thank you. Next question. As both of you know, the State Board of Education is now a partisan body, and it's been that way now for a few election cycles. Tell us how and in what ways your party affiliation or lack thereof will affect how you make decisions as a board member. I believe we start with you, Mr. Allen.
Sure. I came into this race late. I did not start my campaign until June, when it became apparent that we would have a single person running for this office. I felt that giving voters an option, a choice, and with District 12 was the best way to go. It turns out that having come in late to the race, I was forced to run as an independent. But as I've been talking to voters and talking to groups of people, I found that it's very well received that I'm running as an independent candidate. This provides me an opportunity to come into a room, to have conversations with stakeholders, and not really have any strings attached to me. I can provide an open ear and an open mind and not have any weight on my shoulders of having to answer to any other party or any other affiliation. And I find that has worked really well in my conversations with folks, where I can truly show that in the end, I am here for public education. I'm here for the children. And I just want what is best. And it's regardless of political party.
Thank you. Mr. Gill.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting answer because $5,000 of my opponent's contributions came from a PAC that's outside of Utah. And 90% of the donations from that PAC have been donated to Democratic candidates and 10% to independent candidates. And so to pretend that that this is a nonpartisan race, I think is disingenuous. I think the move towards partisan races is a good thing for the state of Utah. I personally, I consider myself a conservative Republican. I've had the opportunity to caucus already, to have several conversations with our legislators, and I think it's important to have that dialogue. One of the things that is being complained about is, well, our legislatures are passing bills that are having an impact on an education, but there's very little impact from educators. Well, I'm an educator, and I'm having that dialogue with those legislators. And as a Republican, I will have the opportunity to caucus with those legislatures and have the opportunity to make sure that I'm giving them feedback on how that's going to impact the classroom. And I think it's going to be critical for Republicans on the state school board to caucus with those legislatures to make sure that bills that are being passed of an education nature are reasonable for teachers.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen, would you
Can
like
I
to
respond to
respond?
that?
Yes.
I'd like to talk about that $5,000 I received. It was from a pack called the Way Back Pack. It was pointed out that they would be a potential source of donation. I looked into their website, I found who they were supporting, and it seemed like a nice group. I went ahead and submitted an application, and with no notification, money was deposited into my account. I reached out to them for a letter of support and explanation, and I got none. There are no strings attached to that money. There's been no communication and no expectations.
Thank you.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'll mention another donor then. Another donor is Equality Utah. And Equality Utah, again, the majority of their donations, if you look at their website and you look at who they're donating to, they are donating to Democrats in the state of Utah. So if we're going to pretend as though this is an independent, that there's no affiliation, then follow the money. The money matters. And the donations for my opponent's campaign are coming from Democratic sources.
All right, let's
Fine.
move
May I
on.
respond to that?
I think we need to move on, if that's all right. We can't keep going back and forth forever. The next question is, what is your assessment of public education in Utah? So U.S. News and World Report recently ranked Utah education as second best in the nation behind Florida. Was this rating merited? How could Utah schools improve? Begin with you, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I think Utah does a tremendous job of education. I think the educators in Utah are phenomenal. I think they do a tremendous job in the classroom. I think one of the things that contributes to a strong education in Utah is strong families. And I think that we've got to continue to promote strong families in Utah, and that's going to continue to move forward with positive things. The thing that I want to be careful of is that we compare, we recognize what we're comparing. And I think the education system across the nation has a lot of things that need to be fixed. So if you're comparing one broken system against another broken system, yeah, we fare well against a broken system. And I think in Utah, we're doing a fairly good job, but we can do better. And that's what we've got to make sure that we're doing. We've got to find innovative ways to reward excellent teaching. We've got to find ways to reward excellent students and make sure that as students are coming through the system, that we're not just pushing them through the system, that we're making sure that students are being placed above the system and that they are progressing as they move through the system. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Yes. What is your assessment of public education in Utah? U.S. News and World Report recently ranked Utah as second best in the nation behind Florida. I'm wondering if you feel that's merited, or how do you feel Utah schools could improve?
Sure. I do feel that it's justified. I'm very proud of our public education system. It does wonderful things with the tools that it's given. We have fantastic public educators who are professional and excellent in their job. We have overall good parental involvement in our education system. Now, of course, saying that, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for additional funding. There's always room for doing better in retaining public educators and making it more advantageous for our public teachers to stay with the profession. And we always need better parental involvement in our children's education. That saying, though, overall, I'm incredibly proud of our public ed program. And as part of the Utah State Board of Education, I fully intend to continue to see it strive and to improve wherever possible and really become a second to none public education program in the country.
Thank you. This question will be first to you, and we're going to delve a little bit into a culture war issue here. The State Board of Education decided that questions about restrooms and gender should be left up to individual schools to decide on a case-by-case basis. Do you agree with that decision?
Yes, I do. First and foremost, it needs to be understood that I support access that protects all of the students' privacy. I also believe that working with the transgender community to provide those privacy is going to be an ongoing process. This community will continue to have a presence in our school, and they need to be embraced and brought in and worked out all privacy matters. Something that I would like to talk about as a possible solution. I work for state parks. I'm involved with recreation on a state level, but I also have strong connections with local recreation centers. And something that has been going on lately in public buildings is a transition, as the buildings need them, to work with family style restrooms. And I could see a real place for those type of restrooms in our public schools in the future as new schools come online and as renovations happen. And I believe that as a possibility of something that could protect all students' privacies and making sure that we're making all the accommodations needed and required.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, as a society, we draw lines, and I think it's important to recognize. I think it's naive to think that we can have mixed gender restrooms and mixed gender. In a school, you've got locker rooms that are going to include several students simultaneously. And to assume that we can mix those locker rooms, I think is naive. Boys should be in boys' locker rooms. Girls should be in girls' locker rooms. And these the individuals who we're talking about, transgender students, they're real people to me. I work with them on a regular basis. I know them by name. And I'm sympathetic. And I want to make sure that we're treating them with love and respect, just like all of our students. But we've got to draw a line, and we've got to recognize that girls' locker rooms should be protected, and they should be protected from a boy who I know is struggling with identity, who may be struggling with sexuality, who may be struggling with what they identify as. But we've got to draw that line, and female bathrooms, locker rooms are female, and male locker rooms and bathrooms are for males.
Applause, please. Thank you. This question will go to Mr. Kelly first. About 11% of public education comes from Washington, D.C. And because of this, Utah schools need to follow certain federal requirements, such as annual statewide tests, career and technical education, special education, etc. Are federal dollars worth this trade-off at the state and local level?
I had an opportunity to sit down with Governor Herbert actually just this afternoon, and what an interesting man, and really a neat individual. I just sat and listened to his stories, and he has some amazing stories. But he told me the story of Common Core in Utah, and how that came about, and what happened, and the story that he told me is what he asked our Attorney General Sean Reyes to do is, you have got to look in what rights do we have as a state? What can the state of Utah do? And Sean Reyes pushed back a little bit, but he says, I'm the governor, you're my attorney, I want you to do this research. And for 4 months, Sean Reyes researched that. And we as a state have the autonomy to choose what's being taught in our schools. Education is a state function, not a federal function. And as a state, we have the right to choose what is being taught in our schools in Utah. And Sean Reyes, Governor Herbert, looked into the legality of that. They established that. And education is a state issue, not a federal issue.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Sure. As far as federal guidelines, standards, and expectations, I too agree that these standards and expectations should be decided on as local level as possible, state, district, right down to the individual school and within the home of the parent. Now, having said that, I realize that the federal government does play a part in establishing overall expectations for public education in this country. I believe that we should take the guidelines that we are provided by the federal government and understand what their expectation is, but make the final decision within our state board of education and our local districts. As far as Common Core and things of that nature, again, I'm all about local control, and the state has the right and the expectation to decide for itself.
Thank you.
Can I reply?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting answer right there, because you're right, the federal government and when the founders of our country set up our country, education was a state thing. The Department of Education has not been around for that long. The Federal Department of Education is an institution that did not exist, has not existed for very long, and should not exist in this country. Education is a state issue.
Did you like 30 seconds? Okay.
I forgot where we were. I believe you get the next
Sure.
question. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that right?
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. Is Utah facing a teacher shortage? And we've been hearing this. I've lived here for almost 40 years and hearing this all the time. Are we facing a teacher shortage? If so, how would you address this as a member of the Board of Education?
Sure. Is Utah facing a teacher shortage? I think the answer to that is dependent upon district. I actually, I'm heading towards a retirement option here in the next 6 months. As currently a law enforcement officer, and I have this opportunity to retire and find a second career. I obviously would like to stay close to home and work for Alpine School District if given the opportunity. They did not have a lot of job opportunities this past year. Now, Alpine School District might be a unique district, and other districts might be struggling to find teachers. So again, one of my main themes is about local control and dealing and coming up with solutions on a local level wherever possible. Some districts, without a doubt, are struggling to find teachers. The solution for that is not an easy solution. It's a difference between pay, education, workload, classroom size. All of these can be dealt with and worked with as stakeholders come together and figure out what is going to be the best way for that school district to deal with those problems. Encouraging our local universities to continue to have a high quality education department and certification process is paramount. And the State Board of Education is key in establishing those standards and expectations.
Thank you.
We have a teacher shortage.
Yeah, I think we have a retention issue is what we have. What we're struggling with in the state of Utah is retaining teachers. There's a high turnover rate in this industry. And I think there's a couple reasons, and I do agree that, depending on where you're at I've been out to Uinta County, which is in District 12. I've been out to Duchesne County, which is in District 12. I've talked with administrators in those districts. I've talked with teachers in those districts and parents in those districts. In Uinta County, the problems are very different from Duchesne County. And in Uinta County, they're struggling to find teachers because everybody's the pay for teachers out there compared to going out and working on the oil fields or the mines and other things is not comparable. And so they're struggling to find those teachers. But one of the things that we need to do in education to do a better job of retaining teachers is get rid of the hoops that we continually ask teachers to jump through. And this comes back to where, as I mentioned before, I think it's important. As a Republican, I will work with Republican legislatures to make sure that bills that are being passed are not creating more hoops for educators to jump through that just create more burdensome responsibilities and require them to jump through hoops.
Thank you.
This will be the
This will
last
be the
question
last
that
question.
I intend to ask. And so if you have questions written down, please hand those in. And if you have some online, please put them in the chat. We already have a few, which I appreciate. This final question goes to you, Mr. Kelly. And that has to do with testing. You talked a little bit about the burdens on teachers, but what should be the goal with testing? And is the state accomplishing those goals adequately?
The first 10 years of my career, I taught English. The last 17 years of my career, I've taught financial literacy. And financial literacy is unique. Let me tell you why it's unique. It's unique to Utah. 17 years ago, our legislature said, hey, we think it's important for students to have a basic understanding of financial and personal finance. And so we're going to create a financial literacy course that will be required for graduation. As a result, teachers, industry professionals, experts from the USBE all got together and created the standards for financial literacy. Then teachers, our state treasurer, our state auditor, and industry professionals got together and created an assessment for financial literacy. I think the standards of financial literacy are phenomenal. I think the end of level test for financial literacy is a good test that tests what it should be testing. In other subjects, we have RISE and RISE testing, which is a Common Core test. And so we're asking teachers, we're saying, oh, we don't teach Common Core, but we're being tested on Common Core. We need to do with other subjects what we did with financial literacy. We need to get teachers, we need to get experts from the industry, and we need to get experts from the USBE together to create the standards, create the end of level test so that we can get good feedback, and it's Utah deciding what's being taught in Utah schools.
Thank you.
Can I have the question one more time?
Yes, it's about testing. What should be the goal with testing, and do you feel the state is accomplishing these goals?
I feel that testing, there are two types of tests that I've seen. I've seen the standardized, state required, end of year tests. And then I've seen the tests throughout the year. As a parent, I'm speaking, that is scattered throughout the year that my children asked to be opted out of so they don't have to worry about it. And I see some really good outcomes and data that comes out of some tests, and I see some data that comes out of other tests that I don't understand how the teachers and the administrators are getting any quality information out of it. I feel that there is room for improvement. It would to look at each test. I've continuously heard about the RISE test from family members and from friends and other interested parties, and how it's not the most effective test and it's hard to get usable data out of it. I think removing some tests is very important, and it could, in the end, take some load off of our teachers' plate and give more in classroom instruction time.
Thank you.
Thank you. This question from our audience: what impact are RDAs or redevelopment agencies having on the funding of our schools? Should the State Board of Education be involved in evaluating the impact that these redevelopment agencies have? I believe we start with you, Mr. Allen.
Redevelopment agencies?
Yes, there are funding mechanisms that local and state governments use in order to help private developments. It's a rather complicated process, but they take money away from other taxing entities in order to fund these projects.
Well, my knowledge of those is extremely limited, right down to what you just told me.
Okay.
However, if there is additional funding sources for public education, and the strings that are attached to those funding sources has been vetted and understood, and is it within the scope of what we want out of public education, I would see no immediate issue or concern with it without doing some further study. I'm a supporter of having private entities or other concerned bodies coming in and assisting public education where needed, when properly vetted. And as long as there's proper oversight, the negative side would have to be watched closely.
All right, thank you. Kelly?
Yeah, I'm a resident of Vineyard. This is something that we're dealing with on a pretty regular basis is basically what's happening is developers are creating deals with school districts, they're creating deals with cities, and these deals exempt them from property taxes. And what it's doing is it's taking money out of the pocket of our school system. RDAs or redevelopment agreements are rewarding and padding the pockets of developers and taking money out of education. One of the ones that is really important, and another group that's supporting my opponent, they were celebrated by the Woodbury Group, who has an RDA in Orem, and that RDA in Orem was for the University Mall, and they don't pay property taxes, and those property taxes place a higher burden on the taxpayer, and that higher burden on the taxpayer is taking money from education. So those schools that we're wanting to be built and those schools we're wanting to renovate aren't being renovated because developers are signing sweetheart deals with boards and taking money from education. And so, yeah, I'm against those RDAs, and I think we need to make sure that that money gets back into the pockets of education funding.
Colonel, would you like to respond?
Well, I'd like to know who donated money to me that represents an RDA.
Stronger Together.
Stronger Together?
Did Woodbury support Stronger Together?
I don't know that. All I know is that Stronger Together is a parental organization that is trying to do what is best for the children inside of Orem. And I fully support what they're trying to accomplish. As far as taking donations, that is between them and their organization. I know they've been a fantastic support to my campaign.
All right, we'll move on then. I've had
Do I
more
have
than,
30 seconds to respond to that.
certainly, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The Stronger Together is a PAC, okay? It was a PIC, okay? A PIC is a political involvement. So that they started out working to defeat Prop 2 in Orem, okay? And they successfully defeated that. PICs are not allowed to engage in political campaigns for candidates, but they did last year. They got their hands slapped by the lieutenant governor. They changed to a PAC. They're now a PAC. And they are supported by the Woodbury Group in Orem that has an RDA agreement with the University Mall.
Thank you.
I probably don't get an opportunity, do I?
Well, if we're going to be consistent, no, we
It's
just
fine.
want to go back and
Okay.
forth
That's
once
all right.
and we can have discussions later with people here if they would like. I've had more than one question here online and in person about the Utah Fits All Scholarship and funding for which is essentially a voucher program, and whether that ought to be expanded or not, and whether you support that. I believe we start with you, Mr.
Sure.
Kelly.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a public education teacher. I've worked in public education for 27 years. I have 5 kids. My 5 kids went through public education. They all attended traditional public education schools. But I also am a fan of a free market system. I'm a fan of capitalism. And I think capitalism has created the greatest country in the history of the world. A free market system, it creates competition. And if you have a system that is doing a good job, then people are going to gravitate to that system. And if you have a system that is failing, people are going to move away from that system. So what happens when you create choice in education, which I support, I think that a parent has every right to make a decision as to what they think is best for their child. I made the decision to send my 5 kids to public schools, traditional public schools, but other parents may make different decisions than me, and I respect that decision. And so having the opportunity to have choice in education, I think, is important for our parents. It creates accountability and it creates competition. And I think that competition in education continues to hold both public, private, and other entities accountable for what's going on in a school.
Thank you.
Sure. I do not support the school voucher in its current version. I don't support it for two reasons. First, as a taxpayer, I do not believe that there is sufficient oversight on how the public funds are being spent, and second, on what is actually being learned. As a concerned parent and advocate for public education, I don't believe the voucher recipients and students in public education are held to the same educational standards and expectations, meaning there's no defined expectation what the individual student has learned using those taxpayer dollars, while every taxpayer dollar in public education is accounted for, standards are established, and expectations are met. I just feel that it's unfair and bothers me as a taxpayer and as a supporter of public education. And I do understand that if the voucher program were to stop, that those funds automatically don't get put into public ed. I get that. I understand that and I respect that. But in its current version, I am against it.
Thank you.
We'll begin with you, Mr. Allen. And this is a related question. What's your position on public charter schools? And the questioner asked, and homeschooling, recognizing that you can receive the Utah Fits All Scholarship for homeschooling as well, but charter schools and homeschooling.
Sure.
I'm a big supporter of parental choice when it comes to their choice of how they want to teach their children. Just because I don't support vouchers in their current form doesn't mean that I'm against homeschooling. My brother and my sister-in-law homeschooled all of their children. I respect that right. I've got friends that go to charter schools. I think it's great. And I've got friends that send their children to private schools. And I even have a coworker that does online. Everyone has a right to choose what educational approach works best for their children and for their household. Completely support that with no issues whatsoever. So there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Kell.
So it's interesting because a taxpayer is a taxpayer, whether they homeschool their kids, whether they send their kids to a charter school, whether they send their kids to a public school, whether they send their kids to a private school. A taxpayer is a taxpayer. And so what's being suggested is that we're asking all taxpayers to pay into that system, and then we're only going to help a certain number of those. Okay. And that's what's disingenuous. If we're going to say we support homeschooling, if we're going to say we support charter school, if we're going to say we support private school, then we've got to recognize that they pay their taxes just like me, who send my kids to public schools. And I do certainly agree. And this is where in the homeschooling movement, there's really two different groups. There's a group that says, I don't want your money because I don't need you telling me what to do with my education for my children. And you have another group that says, hey, I'll take some of that funding. But I do agree, if they're going to take some of that funding and we're spending tax dollars, there has to be some level of accountability that goes with those tax dollars. But it's disingenuous to say, hey, I support choice in education, but you pay for your own schooling, even though you're a taxpayer paying into that system.
Thank you. This
From
comes
an online viewer. As a member of the school board, what can you do to help repair and improve the trust parents have in teachers? What can you do to help teachers feel trusted and appreciated? Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I do. Teachers are on the attack, and it's a hard job, and there's an important balance right now, and there's some bad apples that are creating a bad name for the teaching industry. The thing that I think is important is that we have got to stop in education protecting bad teachers. We've got to create a system where if you're a bad teacher, we get rid of you, and we don't protect you, because you're giving our industry a bad name, and it's the minority. Okay, most educators have great hearts. They're doing a good job. They're doing a phenomenal job of educating our kids, but another donation that my opponent received is from the teachers union, and the teachers union has consistently protected bad teachers in our school system and made it impossible to get rid of bad teachers. I've talked with an administrator that says, hey, as a school board member, give me one a year. Just let me get rid of one a year. Okay. And if they're horrible or bad, just give me one a year. And it's kind of an ongoing joke I have with that administrator. I don't think that administrator wants to fire one teacher a year, but his point is I need to, as a principal, if I have a bad teacher that's hurting my school and hurting our industry, we need to have a system where if they're a bad teacher, we can get rid of that bad teacher.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
The best thing that I could say when it comes to parents not trusting their teachers or having a bad opinion about teachers overall is to invite those parents into the classroom. Have them come in, watch the teachers engage with the children, engage with the teacher, build that relationship. And I guarantee 9 times out of 10, those bad feelings, that distrust is going to evaporate. They're going to see dedicated employees that are doing their absolute best with the tools that they're given. And they're going to see that they have their best interest at heart for those children. Now, I was mentioned, the teachers associations have endorsed me. The UEA and the Alpine Educators Association, Teacher Association has also endorsed me. These associations are designed to help teachers reach their full potential and to make them the best teachers possible going into the classroom. I'm proud of their support, and I was very flattered when they chose to endorse me. I agree with my opponent. If there is a bad teacher, they need to be removed. We suffer that from the industry that I work in as a law enforcement officer. One bad apple can taint the entire basket. We need to set up systems that get rid of those bad teachers, just like there's a system to get rid of bad law enforcement officers. That will help build the trust.
Notice it was 9 out of 10, and he's right. 9 out of 10 of the teachers, if you went into their classroom, they're doing a phenomenal job. Agree with that. It's the 1 out of 10 that's creating the problem. And that's what we've got to address. That's what we've got to deal with. And the union continues to protect the 1 out of 10. And so those bad apples are giving the teaching industry a bad name. It makes it difficult to deal with that. I met with some parents in Uintah County that are dealing with a teacher that is a poor teacher, and they're asking, help us, how can we get rid of this poor teacher? And I went through the process, but we've got to be able to help parents who are dealing with poor teachers.
Sure. Why not?
When I stated 9 out of 10, it doesn't mean it's necessarily a teacher. There's some parents and there are some teachers. They're both human. They're not going to get along. It's human nature. I believe that there needs to be a system set up to remove bad teachers, just like any public employee. But I have complete faith that there's a lot more than 90% of our teachers doing a good job.
Thank you.
What is your approach to curriculum development or changes to the state curriculum? What changes do you think need to happen, if any, in curriculum? Will begin with you.
I was not focused the first 3 words that you said. Would you mind repeating them again?
What is your,
trying to get rid of the cotton ball in my mouth?
oh, you're fine. What is your approach to curriculum development or changes to the state curriculum?
Sure. As far as curriculum development, I think that's a great place for the Utah State Board of Education to play a key role, is in this curriculum development with input from local districts, teachers, and parents, and revisiting this development on a very regularly scheduled basis to be updated, adjusted, and refined whenever needed. I'm been told that the USBE currently is going through math and English and revisiting that curriculum as they're going through all subjects on a very routine basis. I support its development at that level as long as their input from local levels.
Thank you.
Yeah, I described earlier financial literacy and how we came to the standards and strands of financial literacy, and how teachers throughout the state of Utah, industry professionals, experts from the USBE came together and developed that curriculum. Okay. what's a lot of what's happening right now is we've got some expert from Stanford or Harvard that comes in and tells us what we should be teaching and how we should be teaching it. And this is where if you're a proponent of local control, Utah teachers, Utah parents, Utah stakeholders are the ones that should be the decision makers in curriculum and what's being taught in our schools. You know, what happened in financial literacy, because it's unique to Utah, because Utah was one of the first states to say, we're going to require this for graduation. They came together, created the curriculum, created the assessment. That has to happen in math. That has to happen in English. That has to happen in history. That has to happen in all subjects in the state of Utah. It needs to be local and state leaders that are coming together to make the decisions on that curriculum.
Thank you. Okay, we're good. We talked a little bit about this, but there's a question here about if you were elected, how we talked about teachers' unions. How would you collaborate with teachers and their professional organizations? And maybe a better word would be, how would you interact with them? We'll begin with you, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I want to differentiate between a teachers' union and teachers. Teachers' union is not teachers. They are a union organization, and they are a political organization, and they lobby on behalf of lots of issues that don't even relate to education. Okay, teachers are individuals, not organizations, and I don't care whether you belong to a union, whether you don't belong to a union. I want to hear your feedback. I want to know your stance on the issues. I'm willing to dialogue with you. I'm willing to listen to you, because you're on the ground level, you are boots on the ground. The reason why the teachers union didn't endorse a 27-year veteran of the teaching industry is because I speak out against many of the issues that they stand up for. And I think that they are holding back a lot of important change that can move education forward in a positive way. And when they continued to be a roadblock for advocating for excellent teaching and accepting and protecting poor teachers, I'm going to speak out against it. Okay, we need to make sure that as an industry, I'm going to listen to any teacher that wants to pick up the phone, call me, email me, meet me in person, because I want to represent the students, the parents, and the teachers that are the stakeholders in education.
I'm glad Mr. Kelly pointed out how there are teachers as individuals and then teachers associations. I do agree with that statement, and my door is always open to all stakeholders, individual teachers as well as associations, because they all have their unique point of view that needs to be listened to and taken into consideration and included in the conversation as new issues are dealt with, new guidelines are developed. Running as an independent, I think, helps me communicate with these associations and with the individual teachers. It shows that I have no preconceived notions or any political baggage. My door is open and a conversation can happen with anyone, any association, and will be listened to and taken into consideration as we work together to come up with the best solutions.
Thank you.
I'll read about that.
Certainly.
Yeah, it's actions speak louder than words, and I've talked with teachers that don't agree with me politically, teachers that agree with me politically. I've looked at Amendment A, I've looked at Amendment A in detail, and one of the things that I did when I looked at Amendment A is I reached out to teachers from all political spectrums. Okay, conservative, liberal, and everything in between. And I think it's important to reach out to individual teachers. That's who I represent.
All right. We've reached the end of the question portion of this debate. And as we do come to that end,
I want to personally thank our two candidates here today, Cole Kelly, Jason Allen. It takes courage to sign up and run for office. And I think we owe them some respect for having done that. These are often offices that come at the end of a ballot and people don't pay much attention to until they're in the voting booth. I hope tonight that we have given some information that's valuable to you as voters to help you make an informed decision as you go to the fill out your ballot or go to the polling location. We will now have our closing statements. We'll begin with Mr. Allen for 1 minute, please.
Sure. Thanks again for this opportunity. I've enjoyed this opportunity to have a conversation and about what we can do to improve public education and to help our children become the best people that they can be. I want to make sure that my goal in this office is to focus on practical solutions and foster collaboration. My aim is to elevate Utah's public schools to second to none. I will advocate for improved resources and support our dedicated educators and create an inclusive environment where all students can succeed. Civility is essential, and the Utah State Board of Education should never be used to settle petty personal grievances and ostracize members of our community or demonize educators who've dedicated their lives to teaching our children. I will always set a tone of positivity and inclusion while improving our public education. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason Allen, for the opportunity to debate. I love to exchange ideas, and I like to dialogue on education and have an opportunity to talk about the issues and talk about education. It's near and dear to my heart. I've spent 27 years in public education. I continue to love my job. I wake up every morning and I like going to work. And so I enjoy what I do. I talked a lot about my opponent's donations. I want to talk about mine, okay? 80% of my donations are from individual voters. I have one donation from an organization. It's the Republican Party. And I do represent the values of the Republican Party and the Republican platform. I'm reaching out to several leaders. We are a Republican-dominated state. We are a supermajority in the Senate, supermajority at the legislature, and having a Republican to dialogue with those individuals and do what's best for education, I think, is critical for our students right now.
Thank
and
both
thank
of you, gentlemen, and let's please have a round of applause for them. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.